edition of the Michigan Lacrosse Review. My name is Greg Norman, your host, and as always with us, former Detroit Mercy head coach Chris Cullen, now runs Team 91 for Michigan, and the great broadcaster and partner John Losey. If you're not sure, just check out Losey Locker Room, and you get to see all kinds of stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about a game that happened a couple days ago between Rice and Catholic Central, but let's kind of start with the topic we've kind of followed all year. We had a huge comeback victory from the University of Mercy last week on the road at VMI. And Chris, maybe you were kind of rooting for those guys as we talked last week. So you're down 9-4, but they win in overtime. And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, some of Detroit's best teams have kind of caught fire, and at this time of the year, and it looks like they're figuring out their offense a little bit. They found a great scorer and Thundercloud, which I knew that was gonna just once that happened, that was gonna happen. They had it looks like in the NEC they had the tougher part of the schedule and the tougher road schedule. They've got a couple home games in a row, and they can back their way into a conference tournament and be right where they want to be. So that VMI kind of. It's a very Detroit story when your back's against the wall. You've got no other option but to fight your way out. They fought their way out, and now they've got a couple home games in a row, and let's hope they keep fighting and they figured it out. So, I had a lot of seasons like that where kind of at the end we finally figured it out. We got ourselves right, and when the weather turned good, we got good. So. I'm hoping that's the story. I think a lot of maturity is going on. That it looks like that sophomore class has become kind of a nucleus for them. So that's something that you knew was going to happen. And some guys that are kind of out of area from hotbeds are starting to play pretty good in that class. And let's hope for the best.
John, during the Lemoyne broadcast, I noticed, and you and I talked about it a little bit with UDM, and a lot of freshmen, sophomores kind of coming on the field, especially in that third quarter when they were making that comeback. And I thought that was an interesting. And if you look at the storyline from the VMI game, there's also those same names were part of that process. So maybe that says something that they're expanding the landscape a little bit.
Yeah, and then just an exciting game. It's what they needed, right? And you and I talked last week during the Lemoyne game was there was a point in the game where you said it was either going to go in the good direction or it was going to go in the not so good direction, and it went in the good direction. I think that spilled over to a certain degree down to VMI. And when you look at the numbers, Thundercloud had 3, but then you had 7 other guys who had 1 goal. And that's the way you need to win. When you're not, overly, more talented than the other team, it's about everybody chipping in. And so to have 7 goals from one, from other guys is unbelievable. And you had Skinner and Grallman and Marshall. It was the only shot they took. And so they were 1 for 1 on those shots. And so you look at those little statistics and you say, all right, playing as a team is what they've got to do.
Chris, we've got 1-10 Wagner College coming into town. They're on Staten Island. If you're not familiar, they're part of that NEC. As Charlie Hayes, the UDM new coach, is trying to get his feet on the ground, it helps to have a 1-10 team when you've had a spark as we had last week. The question is, if you don't take advantage of it this week, does it put you back farther, or is it just another bump in the road?
Well, I think, I was doing some math, and I think, and I'm not 100%, my math isn't that good, but they're kind of in a must-win situation to get into that tournament for the NEC. And that, with the MAC, that was always kind of like, okay, guys, I think all but 1 year we made the MAC tournament. That was, kind of like that was the minimum ante to get in. So looking at the NEC is kind of a similar situation to the MAC. That's the minimum ante. So they're it's a young team that they're back against the wall. So 1-10, 10-1, VMI was having the best seat. People were saying VMI was unbeatable and having one of the best years that they've ever had, and no chance. So 1-10, 10-1, who cares? When your back's against the wall, you got to win a game. So that's kind of a Detroit thing, and that's kind of the way it always has been down there. And I'm expecting that hasn't changed much with from year to year to year. So I don't think the opponent and the score matters. I think they need to just take care of their own business.
I'll throw this out for either one. We certainly wish the Titans a good luck this weekend. But we were all watching the Michigan-Penn State game. We saw what happened there. It's that, we kind of think Michigan is that sort of, you get going in the middle of the season when the weather gets warmer. My first question is the Big Ten Conference the best conference in the country? And how much does a loss to Penn State hurt them? Because I think it sets them back farther than just a regular loss.
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure the Big Ten is the best conference in the country. I mean, top to bottom, especially when you look at, well, I mean, I know Chris is shaking his head because he's going to talk about his alma mater beating Maryland. Like, how does that even happen if they're the best conference in the league? But I'll flip it that way and say that's why they are the best conference in the league when someone like Rutgers can beat Maryland. But
right.
I mean, I think top to bottom, you look at Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State has just been so impressive all year, and I know we started the season talking about, hot seat, maybe a mention or two there, but what they've done and the way that they've looked, right? I mean, there's records and then there's how you look, and they passed the smell test. And I think a number of these teams, as they, whoever comes out of this Big Ten is going to be like, I mean, unbelievably battle tested.
I don't. Chris can talk
about Rutgers now.
Yeah, the ACC is just as good, right? Like, I think between the Big Ten and the ACC, you've got some powerhouses. I mean, Syracuse is humming the ball. Beat Notre Dame. That was a heck of a game. North Carolina, I think, has every potential. And then, again, these teams, they're just beating up on each other, and anybody can beat anybody in any situation. So, it's pretty cool. I think in the Big Ten, like, you got to get to that Big Ten tournament, right? I think, 6 of the 10 teams, do they all make it? I don't think so.
No, 6 teams.
Right. And, especially with Michigan hosting it this year, I'm sure that they're going to be, again, back against the wall. We're ready to go next week. So, seeing inconsistency is the consistent thing in college lacrosse. I think we're seeing it a little bit in high school too, but anybody can beat anybody, and I think it's great for fans. I think coaches are having a tough time with it, but boy, is it fun to watch week to week because you just never know what's going to happen.
One of the other coverage that we provide is the MIAA. If you look at the numbers, we've got Hope back on top at 2-0. Adrian is 1-0. It was earlier this season. Not earlier, a couple of weeks ago. Hope thrashed Albion a little bit, 15-8. It'll be an interesting, but kind of as we prognosticated some 6 weeks ago, we kind of said it was going to be the big two, and maybe that's not the case. Maybe Adrian's going to slip in the back door on that one. And Shrine looks good. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not as clear cut as it has been in the past, right? I mean, you've seen the dominant teams, and I think we see that in the landscape, and pretty much what Chris just mentioned as well. I mean, it's the whether it's inconsistency or it's more parity, I don't know, but something is bringing teams closer and closer together especially when you look at the D3 schools and a lot of these conferences as well.
Is the cold weather of the last couple of weeks kind of subdued lacrosse both at the high school and collegiate levels? Does it seem like that to you guys?
Yeah. It's just not as it's hard, right? It's hard to fully engage when you're in a state when it's 32 degrees. I mean, I broadcast the Brother ICC game last night, up in the Crow's Nest, and it was, and I've got, I got ski stuff on. I mean, you've been proud of me, Greg. I got some from my dad, and it's all top notch stuff, and I was warm, but you shouldn't have to do that. It's the middle of April. It makes it hard on everybody.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, my one take on the MIAA is I think, as we've all been seeing a little bit because of the cold and because of it's been an extended cold, injuries have lingered a little bit longer for some of those teams. So you could be at full strength right now, and coming into that second round of MIAA games, you might not be, and some of the people who were not at full strength might be at full strength. It's just so hard to tell with everything going on, and weather and injuries coincide. And, if you're going to hit them at the right time or the wrong time, I think that's one of the things that, when we've seen Notre Dame and we've seen just injuries are, can be hurting people. And with this weather, it's not going to help people come back sooner than later.
I don't know.
All right, I got to cut this out because I'm coughing. Hang on. John, you broadcast, as you mentioned, you broadcast the Rice CC game, 10-9, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
From watching part of it, Chris made a point earlier. I think it looked a little more like a desperate team from Rice. I don't mean desperate, just played. I haven't seen a Rice team play that hard in a while.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is interesting. Hopefully that, that with a 10-9 game, I think we're setting ourselves up for some good games as we come down the stretch in the Catholic League championships as well as the MHSAA playoffs.
Yeah, no, it was, I've been talking about it all day with a bunch of different people, and it was a good, hard fought game. Turnovers seem to be the norm, I think, across high school in general, right? I know Rice is averaging 15 and CC had a number of turnovers as well, but putting it in perspective, I mean, they played hard and Rice was down 2. And I know that, CC had some bumps and bruises, the injuries like Chris talked about as well, but in the end, I think you had the 2 best teams, up at the top. And I know Country Day is very talented, and you got Rockford and EGR as well. So, I do think it's going to be an exciting season once we get to some warmer weather and people can get out there. But, and Rice did. Rice is not as loaded as they have been in the past. And so this team, in order to win, has got to play like a team, and they got to play hard. And so that was good to see, because look at the stretch they've had, Greg, and they played Lake Forest out of Chicago, ranked number 1 in the state, defending champ, and then they played St. Viator, then they play CC, and then they go down and play St. Xavier on Friday, and then they follow up with Trinity in Kentucky. And so, talk about a 5-game stretch. That's the gauntlet.
Yeah,
I think it was a super fun game. Oh, sorry, Greg.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was a super fun game to watch, and I just think it's going to be so really exciting to watch them play as the weather gets warmer, because we didn't really see a game with a lot of passing, assisted goals. There was a lot of unassisted goals, a lot of individual plays, which I think in this year for the first time against Brother Rice, it favored Catholic Central. They have some better athletes for the first time in a long time, and so that style of game in the cold weather where unassisted goals were the way it went. CC had the advantage, and it was nice to see a very hungry Brother Rice team fight back and kind of be in a position of the lesser athlete that was pushing to fight and playing with a ton of heart, and that was really cool to see. So I think it's going to be really interesting in better weather to see who's going to get those assisted goals and who can kind of make a jump. And I think it's anybody's game, and that might be advantage Rice in that versus a very athletic Catholic Central team that's going to be very unassisted versus a team that has the potential to be assisted in goals as we get into a kind of a climate where passing is a little bit better. So it's going to be great to watch. It's going to be a great game. I think it'd be great to have another 1-goal game.
Yeah, it will. The only thing I would say is I've been doing this a long time, and we've had some teams float to the surface. Obviously, Heartland, a few other teams in Division I. It'll be nice at some point when we're not having the same conversation about the same 2 teams. And for me, that means parity across the state, which means the sport gets better. And it's not to suggest what they're doing isn't great. It is. And I wish them all the best of luck. From the other side, it would be interesting, and it'll be fun at some point if we can ever figure out how to get over the hump. And that's another question for another day.
Yeah, that's a whole as a public school lacrosse advocate, right? That's where you want it to go, and at least where I want it to go, and that's for my own personal reasons. But it would be nice. It would be nice to have a bigger conversation, but that's a long way away. If you've been to Catholic Central lately and you've been to Brother Rice lately, it's a long way away.
But I would say one thing. I mean, you see these 2 teams, and I understand the history. Obviously, I've been involved in it for a number of years. It's not like, that Rice and CC are just elevating even more and getting farther away from the pack. They're almost going down, and the pack is going down as well. And so I think that's really the bigger issue here, right? Yeah. Because if things were going to progress like they were 5 years ago in terms of the talent level at some, at the public schools, it did with Heartland, obviously. But I'm not seeing that now. And we talked about the stick skills and we talked about the fundamentals. And so I think there's a lot in that, Greg, and I understand your point and I understand what it was, 5 and 6 years ago, but I think the conversation, it's still there, but it's not as, magnified as I think it used to be.
No, that's a real strong point to go back to. We've lost something in the neighborhood of 40, 41 junior varsity teams this year across the state. So scheduling has been an issue, and we kind of move on from there. I want to move on. We got a lot of stuff on the show. We've got, like I pointed out, William Fox from Wagner College, who's coming to UDM this coming weekend. We're going to have a chance to talk to him next. And John, you and I did a little bit of backstage video at UDM's last game against Lemoyne. We're going to try to show you a little bit of what it's like to broadcast a game at sort of again, it's not the Super Bowl, but just an insight of where we come from and how you do things and kind of what ESPN Plus is about. And just some quick video to give you a flavor of what it's like to broadcast from a hot dog truck. And that's,
they took away my limo. I remember when Chris was coach, I get a limo down there. I'd be in my suit, and now it's, you and I, buddy.
Yeah. Well, up next is William Fox, and right after that, Chris and I are going to get a chance to talk a little bit about the NEC, if it's the right league for the teams that are in it, including UDM, and we'll be back in a second.
Okay. At the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, ending abuse is not just our job, it's our promise.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Have fun. Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just
and adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Welcome back. We're talking to Will Fox, the head coach at Wagner College, who's coming to the University of Detroit Mercy here this coming Saturday for a NEC clash with the Detroit Titans. And you're on a plane, and you just talked to me a little bit about taking a couple of planes to get your team to Detroit. So is this your first time here? And just talk a little bit about your team.
Yes, this will be my first time leading a group to Detroit, which I'm very much looking forward to. It should be a great game. Two teams that are really fighting for their playoff lives at this point in the season. And, you watch Detroit on tape and they compete really, really hard and they play hard and they're tough and they're physical. And I think our team's learning a lot of those similar traits throughout the course of the year. I think our guys have done a really good job competing hard every day, learning what it takes to win Division I lacrosse games, and just being really consistent in who we are, right? Being tough on the ground, being disciplined with the ball in our stick, discipline, getting organized offensively, defensively. So those are some of the traits that I think our team, is starting to represent more and more each week.
When you come in as a first-year coach, coming from North Carolina as an assistant, obviously being at Sacred Heart, you're a Fairfield player. Obviously, you got drafted by the Bayhawks. You've got a stellar background as a lacrosse coach. My question from you is, as a face-off specialist, this guy it's a detail-oriented kind of position within the field. Does that help you in your first year in a program that traditionally has not had a lot of success over the last 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, I think everything, right, in your life and throughout my coaching career goes into what to expect, how to help the guys right away. My experience with Sacred Heart, learning how to coach those types of players are very similar to the guys that are at Wagner, maybe overlooked, maybe a little under recruited, undersized, need to be helped physically a little bit and really taught the fundamentals of the game. So we've put that at the forefront of our preparation and our growth all year long. And then from an operational standpoint, all my time at Carolina certainly helps with that and sort of putting in your systems and how you want to be seen around campus and what the expectations are every day for the guys on and off the field, most importantly, and the way that they carry themselves, whether it's, showing up to the field in a suit and tie or when we're traveling on a bus trip. It's very much details all the time and, just teaching them what it takes to be, represent yourself the right way. And, ultimately the winning and success comes later.
How important was the LIU overtime victory just to see that in the locker room and be able to get over that sort of first hump?
Yeah, it was great. The guys played really hard. We talked a lot that week leading up to about, continuing to progress, but continuing to progress in our own growth, right? So learning situational lacrosse, continuing to stick to the toughness piece, attacking ground balls, diving, blocking shots, some of those things that don't necessarily always show up in the scoreboard. We worked a lot on that and situational lacrosse being one of them. Early in the season, it was, hey, how can we get the games a little bit closer here? Can we manufacture odd man opportunities and goals in different ways to get the games a little bit tighter? And while we're still developing our skills, now we're in the back half of the season, your sort of skills have caught up to what's required at the Division I level. And now it's, hey, we need to manage situational lacrosse, right? We had a couple of close games, some 1-goal games early, UMass Lowell being one of them, NGIT being one of them. And, showing the team that those little moments in the third quarter and the fourth quarter are really actually a lot bigger than they think. And I thought we executed great down the stretch, guys, the whole game. Even when LIU had a 3-goal run, we didn't get too high, we didn't get too low. Guys were coming off the field after goals, having great messaging to one another about continuing to execute and do what we want to do and, not worry about what they're trying to do.
Early or later in the show, Chris Cullen, the former UDM head coach, who's now part of this program, he took over. Charlie, let me start this over so I can cut this thing. Christ, my mouth's not working this morning. A little later in the show, we're going to talk a little bit to Chris Cullen, who's last year's University of Detroit Mercy coach, who stepped down, obviously, for Charlie. We talked about the NEC being a really good league for schools like Wagner, like Lemoyne, certainly like UDM. UDM was in the ASUN where you're playing Utah and Air Force and very, very good caliber competition. Even the losses this year for some of the teams that we've had a chance to broadcast, they're competitive games. And that's, I think, a real factor in certainly recruiting and the success of the program. But even if your team isn't on the winning side of something and they're at least in games and not getting beat, 46-0, I think that helps grow the league as well as make the players better.
Yeah, absolutely. When the NEC re-announced last spring that they were bringing back men's lacrosse, obviously that put Wagner in that league. I was at Sacred Heart at the time. I thought it was really a great fit for Wagner, kind of shifting away from the MAC a little bit and leaning into the NEC. I think a lot of the teams are similar. It's almost a Midwestern league or,
Right.
That sort of area with Robert Morris and Mercyhurst and Cleveland and Detroit. But it just, I think there's a lot of parity in terms of, the things that we have to deal with institutionally and some of the resources and, what it means to each school to have a men's lacrosse team. And for me, when I interviewed, I thought it was a home run. I thought it was a league that we could learn to compete in. And, as you're seeing now, it's very competitive. We're 3 weeks away from the season being over and pretty much everybody's in the mix still. So it's competitive. It's fun. I think it's a really cool brand of lacrosse that each team is playing. So it's, I think for us and our growth as a program, and like you mentioned, being a first year coach, being able to beat a team like LIU in year one is really something that our guys have latched onto to say, hey, we can compete in this league, and we just need to execute who we are and not try and be something that we're not.
As a Lake Placid native, you got for us Midwesterners now. They know what they think they know about Staten Island, but just briefly talk about Staten Island because it's a pretty cool place if you've never really been there or spent much time there.
Yeah, it's a great place. Um, it's a sort of very blue collar area around Wagner, but you go a little bit further and it turns very white collar and, mansions and things like that. And actually the Corleone compound is actually real life in Staten Island. So you have those types of properties but around Wagner College is very blue collar area, lots of American flags and single family homes and I like to call it the sort of workforce of New York City. And then from our stadium, you can actually look and see from basically all of campus, you can see the Verrazano Bridge, which connects Staten Island to Brooklyn, which just makes for an incredible view and overlooks the harbor. And, you kind of get the best of both worlds, right? You have access to the city, but you are in a blue collar area. So guys are safe and, but they certainly enjoy the free ferry rides over to Manhattan, no doubt about it.
I keep thinking of a lot of folks. The only thing lately that's gained Staten Island a lot of publicity is SNL's Colin Jost having bought the ferry, the old ferry, and that's always been sort of in the forefront because they're always having conversations with it on SNL, and that's an iconic boat, but it's also a kind of a storyline that gives us a little more understanding of what Staten Island used to be. But last question. First year coach, what do you know now in the short term that you've been the head coach? What do you know now that you didn't know even when you took the job?
Uh, Probably for myself, and I think the staff would agree with me, is, you never know what you're going to get when you're coming into a locker room, right? And in particular, a locker room that has not had a lot of on-field success and victories. So for me, that was probably my number one concern. But throughout the interview process, administration, had repeated to me, "Hey, they're a great group of guys. I think they might be ready for a change, and but they're a great group of guys. They love their experience." And I thought it was a little odd at the time that administration would be so plugged into how guys felt about the team and the program. But I know some alums, so I knew that there was a pride for Wagner. And getting here, it's absolutely shown true. We got incredibly lucky as a staff to come into a locker room of guys that just want to compete. They want to learn. They want to be taken seriously. They don't, they want to do whatever it takes to win and to compete at the college level and in our league. And, for all of us, right? Myself, for them, it's been a learning curve for everybody of, hey, demand what we're capable of, and the example I use is in the fall, we were trying to learn how to throw the ball hard. And I said, guys, just throw it hard. If you throw it into the bleachers, you better throw it hard. And they were, they easily jumped on board and they said, all right, he said throw it hard, so I'm going to throw it hard. And you look at our stick work and our growth on that side, the way that our guys are capable of moving the ball, and it comes from a lot of balls rolling into the bleachers, but guys stuck with it and that type of stuff, and has really shown true to help us. But we got incredibly lucky with that group, and the leadership committee and the captains, everybody's worked really, really hard together to try and move this program in a positive direction.
Throwing the ball hard must come out of page 3 of the coaching manual because I keep telling the kids if you throw it hard, even if they miss it, it goes out of bounds, they get to reset the defense. If you throw it soft and they pick off a pass, it's a fast break the other direction. So which of those two opportunities do you want to figure out? And I said, I'm a lot happier resetting my defense, on a dead ball than the others. So I certainly get that. Well, listen, I appreciate your time and your opportunity to talk to us, and we wish you the best of luck on Saturday. Certainly have a safe trip coming into Detroit. If you get a chance to get down to one of the Conies downtown, talk to Charlie about that. Go down and have one of the Conies. You'll find it to be. You think you're in New York. So,
All right, I'll have to give that a shot.
all right. Have a safe trip, and again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Welcome back, Chris. I just wanted briefly to talk about the new league in the NEC. Obviously, with a victory last week in overtime, kind of coming back. If you look at the demographics from those schools, obviously Wagner's coming in this week. They're a Staten Island school. Very similar background. They haven't had a great success at all in lacrosse. This is William Fox's first year as a coach. Now they're 1-10, so obviously they had a big win over LIU in overtime, 12-11. Is it the right fit? Or should these almost be Division II schools?
You take Wagner, you take Lemoyne, you take Detroit. They're very similar campuses, just in different areas of the country, right? I always felt that way about the MAC, right? You take Marist, it kind of looks like Detroit, just in Poughkeepsie, New York. There's some differences, but not really. You take Canisius, it's Detroit and Buffalo. So, there's a heritage of those sports at those schools that has been Division I, and I think it gives an opportunity. Should they be Division II? I think there's a lot of Division II schools that look a lot different than those schools. I think you have to group schools that kind of look, similar with each other, and they just happen to have a Division I, nameplate next to them, and that's the best you can do. I know Cleveland State looks completely different than Detroit, and Robert Morris kind of looks a lot different. VMI certainly looks different than most any other school out there, but I think it's about as best as you can get. The NEC and the MAC are kind of similar. Schools all look the same. So
let me ask this question: you guys end up in the ASUN under your tenure at UDM, right?
Yeah.
How do you reach out to a league that's just probably more difficult than it should be for UDM?
Well, that wasn't. I mean, that was an administration choice, right? That had nothing to do with me. I kept the email. I still have it. I printed it out where I said I think we should stay in the MAC. So I'm not going to take.
Okay, no. I'm just saying.
And again, the MAC, us being so geographically different than everyone else, there have been years and years of people trying to get us out of that one too. So there was always a fight there. The ASUN, I will say to the administration at Detroit's defense, they kind of had a bait and switch. They didn't tell us a lot of things. They said it was going to be one thing and it was going to be another. Now, it all goes back to the Horizon League basketball conference where Robert Morris and Cleveland State are in a conference with Detroit. And if you look at the history of the Horizon League, it started out as all private schools, and now the only private school in there is Detroit. So I think one of the things, if I was an administrator, whatever sport it is, or your athletic department is, you want to be in places that look like you, so you can and are funded like you and can compete like you. So whatever division that is, that's the most important thing. So I think that's what you're looking for, and we had that for a very long time, and things change and move on at Detroit, and I think they're in the best possible situation they can be with their natural conference folks in all sports, and some other schools that look like that.
I guess one of the conversations that we've been having, if you look at high school around here, everybody talks about the Catholic League or the Oakland County League. If it's lacrosse,
sure.
You might, if it were football, you might add the PSL. You might add the Macomb Conference at the top. You might say the OK Red in Grand Rapids. The Capital Circuit, A Circuit. Those always get the attention, right? There's not a lot of Hoosiers in that group because they're all pretty good athletes and they're great programs.
Sure.
The nice part about UDM and NEC, or whether it's club or any IA, there's a level for a lot of people to play at wherever their talent takes them, wherever water seeks the same level, right?
Right.
I think we forget that, which is kind of the point I'm saying with the NEC, is that they're there. Now they're competitive. And if you're competitive, at least you get a chance to have A, fun, but B, sort of right the ship, because at some point you can coach and well-intended losses are well-intended losses, but at some point in sports, you got to win.
Correct. And, you just think about it from a kid's standpoint, they have this, VMI's been riding high. They're, winning season well over 500, no matter what happens the rest of the season for them. Some quality wins, and then U of D comes in there and stings them, and that's that happens in sports, and that could just set a spark off, and it just happens that the next couple games are going to be games that are the schools that kind of look a little bit closer to them, and then you end up with a Cleveland State team that's a regional. That's turned in. It's a pretty nasty game between two teams that don't like each other, right? So. What fun that is for anybody, right? Like, I don't care about bus rides or what you have and what you don't have. All of a sudden, I'm sure on Monday they're going thinking, okay, like, wow, we can make a tournament. We make a tournament. We win 2 games, and all of a sudden we're in the NCAA tournament, which is one of the best times you can ever have at a school like Detroit, because you get all the fancy stuff you get when you get to an NCAA tournament that other people are used to all the time. So it's a blast. So.
Well, I bring the subject up because the coolest thing I've seen in the last couple of weeks, Michigan had a sellout against Penn State, even to the point where they had to put stands on the south end of the field, all the way across from the goal line extended to goal line extended, to add another 400, 500, 600 seats, and the place is crowded and it's on fire. And it's just at all the levels we have. It's been fun to watch.
Oh yeah, I mean, Michigan does such a great job hosting games they take care of the kids and. They do great group rates. I think it's like $5 for a game. So what great entertainment and family entertainment. You can take a bunch of kids. And I know a lot of my little 91 kids have gone up there in groups and had a great time. And there's all these different teams and community teams and tribal teams, and everybody's showing up there, and kids just having a blast. It's great for the sport. And you've got these kids that are, middle school and below that are just going home and dreaming of lacrosse, and it's really cool. So Michigan they do such a great job with it, and with the state finals being there for high school, it just adds. Week to week. I'm looking forward to. I've been enjoying games on TV this year because it's something I never got to do. And it's just so fun to go, have 2 or 3 screens going at a time. I'm really looking forward to the Big Ten tournament. I'm going to go to all those games. It's going to be just incredible to watch, and they do such a great job there.
All right, well, stay tuned.
Joe's Pizza.
What's that?
I can eat that Joe's Pizza that's right down the street. Joe's New York Pizza is pretty good.
I hear you. Well, listen, I appreciate the time. We're taking a look up next. John and I are going to talk a little bit about broadcasting from a hot dog truck, so we'll be back in a second.
I'll never forget the day I nearly died. The only way we found out I had any kind of heart issue was when I went into sudden death. I think unless you are a heart disease patient, you may not know how much work the American Heart Association does behind the scenes to save your life. Since my cardiac arrest, I've watched all 3 of my children grow into adulthood, and I'm still here.
Learn more about the American Heart Association's work at helpheart.org.
In the car down I-75 to Detroit, to the University of Detroit Mercy, who will tangle with the famous Le Moyne College Dolphins. We're doing an ESPN Plus broadcast today, and we thought we'd take a little bit of a diversion for the Michigan Lacrosse Review and show you what it looks like to broadcast sort of a second-tier Division I NCAA lacrosse game. It'll be fun to see what's the insights might be. My broadcasting partner, John Losey, who obviously is part of the Michigan Lacrosse Review show, and I will give you what we think is hopefully an insider's look at what it might be interesting to see broadcasting a game, and I think you're going to see some things that might surprise you. You'll also see some things that might astound you. But the first NEC game that Lemoyne has played in Michigan will certainly be played this afternoon at noon. And we'll give you all the insights of how games are broadcast on an ESPN Plus network. And give you kind of an insight as we drive up. Then we will get past the guard. You can understand that we're part of the broadcast. And we'll have a conversation with him. Since we are doing a discussion, thank you, sir. That was easy enough to get in. We are, in fact, coming through UDM right now. And you can see the tower in front of us. Off to the left here is the home of the Titan basketball program, Callahan Hall. And we're coming up to what you can now see as the field. We'll take a parking spot. Not a lot of folks here yet on Jersey Day, but we'll have that conversation and we'll see where that goes. I'll take the sunglasses off. We're going to see how this all broadcasts and how this works. We'll catch up with broadcaster John Losey coming up 20 minutes before game time.
Game day.
Nice to see you.
Game day, Coach.
You looking for a good game?
I'm looking for a great game today. Good goaltenders. I think we got a good game on tap here today at the University of Detroit Mercy Titans. Titan Field.
You know that they have a kid on. John, we're gonna do. What the hell have I got going here? Hold on. You know that they have a kid on the team from Forest Central, lives in Traverse City?
Really?
Yeah. John, we're here at UDM. We're gonna kind of give folks some inside understanding of what it's like to broadcast a hot dog stand.
That's right.
It's a joke, but the reality to it is that we got a good game here for the NEC. It'll be interesting to see what transpires. Division I sports are interesting from the standpoint that not everybody produces the game the same way.
That's right.
But we should have a pretty good game here. And thoughts on broadcasting being a part of this program?
You know, I think it's important. I think anytime you can, put it out here and show the kids and how hard they work, even in the hot dog stand, joke. But I think it's important. The more you can market the team, and especially the sport of lacrosse, I'm all for it.
Well, we're going to try and bring you a sort of a flavor of inside. We'll show you John doing some of the games, some of the commentary from me. Probably not a lot of game action, but what it's like to be in the truck. We've had some earlier video. Watch Lemoyne come out. That's their first trip to Michigan.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting. We had a chance to interview Dan Sehan for our show, Michigan Lacrosse Review.
Yeah.
That's up, already been up a couple of days.
Yeah, he's
6 national championships at the Division II level.
11 all-time coaching in lacrosse.
379 and 58, so he's been really successful.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, he's a West Jenny High School graduate.
Yep.
One of the best storied programs in America, certainly. Ithaca College, national champions as a player, and obviously everybody stayed home.
That's right.
So when you're in a hotbed like Central New York, what are the positives and what are sort of the things you'd like to see better for a broadcast like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just, more communication. I think more prep, really. I mean, it's just, there's so many jobs being done by so many people, especially PJ here. He's wearing so many hats that it would be just better to be able to, to do a pregame or things like that. I mean, we're doing this here, just us.
Right.
But more prep and things like that just to make it as best as you can.
Okay, well, we'll give you the best line we can and try to keep the camera with one hand on it.
That's right.
And we'll go from there. We'll be back. We're going just before game time.
That's right.
Teams are on the field. We're just getting into kind of an idea what the inside looks like. We got PJ all the way in the back. PJ is the producer of this program, and we're just having that conversation. PJ, how much work takes to go into this? Quite a bit.
Absolutely ridiculous amount, especially when you don't know what you're doing.
Thanks, PJ. Always good conversations with the video meister.
This is fun.
Grudowski, so he's the.
When everything works. Hopefully the set, probably a set play. Hopefully get a good look here because as we mentioned before the break, ran out of good drop balls. Titans to get it back, but not a lot of quality opportunities so far offensively for the Titans.
It's interesting at 5-0 at this point in the game. It's either going to end up a closer game or it's going to be, at some point somebody's going to break out of this.
just chipping away at it. The Lemoyne's doing it. UD's got to score. One of the things we were talking about at the break is that you've got two behind, and that's great. If you got guys up on top that can shoot, defensive guys got their back turned. The reality is they don't really have any downhill shooters.
Yeah, Charlie Hayden has made some changes here. He's really went through the Titans. He's been kind of a freshman. He's seen good game action today. Shot there.
Nice shot.
There we go. That's number 2.
One of the interesting things, it's now raining, and we're in a hot dog stand, which is cool. You can see behind us here that the field broadcasts at this level are done well, but they're difficult sometimes because you don't have press boxes, you don't have the kind of touches that other processes have, and it's just one of those things. But we'll see a second half between Lemoyne and UD and see if it turns out to be a better game.
John, you got a chance to see us, not up and close and personal, but just a bit, just trying to, give some insight to what goes on. And it's a labor of love. We're not making huge money as broadcasters, to say the least, but it's something that's fun, and it's fun to watch the kids have an opportunity to play, and hopefully that you guys enjoyed it. That being the case.
Thanks for doing that, guys.
It's fun. I mean, it is. And people say, because I'm doing the Michigan State game for the girls club team as well, and I was up there on Sunday, and there were 2 games going on, and so I didn't have a table, I didn't have a chair, and I'm on the field hooking stuff up, and it is like you said, Greg. We do it for the love of the game. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was setting up, and this older couple came across and said, "Hey, you John Losey?" I said, "Yeah." And they said, "I want to let you know that we've come to every one of my granddaughter's games this season, and we were getting ready to come last week, but I came down with this terrible, terrible sickness, and I couldn't go." And I said, "Miriam, I can't go." And she said, "What about that link that the coach sent out?" And they said, "And we listened to you, and it was unbelievable, and thank you so much for doing that." And that right there was like, that's why I do it.
That's cool. We run some cable stations up in the north part of Oakland County, and I always joke that I never want to get my 6 viewers mad. So it's just one of those things that, you kind of keep pushing forward, and off you go.
That's right.
So for everybody in back, we'll be back next week with a little bit more, and hopefully a little more insight to the high school side of things, and we'll bring that with you. So for Chris and for John, thanks for watching.